Today we proceed, and our topic today is about nature. All of us find peace and harmony in nature. Yet nature holds great wisdom that we often do not understand. Nature invites us to reflect on the impermanence of life. It's not all just about the grandeur of nature, the beauty of nature. Of course, that's wonderful. But hidden behind that is this theme of impermanence. Everything keeps changing. The seasons change. The ecosystem keeps moving and evolving and changing. And in all of it, if we stop to look and really contemplate, we begin to see how insignificant we are. Think about it. Our insignificance, our inability to withstand when we step into the forest or the ocean or any such place where nature is vibrant and alive. We're in a mess. We're not able to be there and hold our own. We try, we build ships, we build boats, we build all kinds of ways in which to deal with nature, but are we really able to? Nature holds tremendous challenges for us, and we've tried through all our civilization to overcome those challenges. But somehow, it's never enough. We're not able to change the seasons. We're not able to change the weather. We're not able to change so many things, typhoons, storms, so much that goes on. And nature keeps showing us how small and insignificant we are. It shows us how fragile, how vulnerable and fleeting our lives are. And for those of us who live in cities, we're totally disconnected with nature. We've built homes to protect us from her seasons, her wildness and fierce creatures. We think we're safe, but in our imagined safety lies a storm of ignorance. Today we're going to go deep beyond the surface and look at how we can bring that wisdom that nature offers into our lives. Join me as we go into the Bhagavatam. So let's look into the Bhagavatam today. We're on the 10th Canto, chapter 20. And it's talking about the rainy season and autumn in Vrindavan. I don't know if many of you have been to Vrindavan in India. It's an incredibly amazing place. I remember going there back in the 1980s when it was not so populated. It didn't have all these people and tourists coming in, and it was extremely peaceful and beautiful. And over the years, it's changed a lot. A lot of people now there, and it can be really crowded. But this is going back thousands of years to the time around, some say 5,000 years ago, and some say 7,000 years ago. Astrological readings seem to indicate around 7,000 years ago, around 5,000 BCE. So this is the time when Krishna was here in Vrindavan. Krishna, the Supreme Being, comes into this world from time to time. And when he comes here, he brings with him his personal team, literally, all his devotees and all his loved ones and his family and all of that, just to show us what it's like to be with God. See, most of us have no idea what God looks like or what God does. And if somebody told us, we might doubt them. So he comes to personally show us what is it like to be with God. And when he comes here, he brings along the entire environment, not just the people, but the environment. That place which is an embodiment of the spiritual world, is called Vrindavan. And Vrindavan, although a place on earth, has all the energy and the beauty and that vibration of the spiritual world. And if you are sensitive to it and you go there, you will feel that energy. It is palpable. It is so amazingly real. You can feel it within yourself. Anyways, we're going back in time, and it's talking about how the rainy season had just begun. Now, I don't know if you've lived in a place where they have monsoons like they do in India, but when the rains come, they really come. There's a lot of rain. So the rainy season had begun, giving life and sustenance to all living beings. See, when you're in nature, it's a very different experience. In a small village, in a small town, you see that. You see the life and sustenance. Here we live in concrete cities now, covered with paved roads, and it's a nuisance, when the rain comes. When you're there in the village or in the tiny, small little place with farms and so on, you get to see nature in its full blossoming. So the sky began to rumble with thunder, and lightning flashed on the horizon. The sky was covered by dense blue clouds accompanied by lightning and thunder. It says here, the way the sky and its natural illumination were covered could be compared to the way that a soul is covered by the illusory veil of the material world. What does that mean? The soul is covered by the illusory veil of the material world. Let's take a look at what that might be. What is it like for the soul to be covered by the veil of this material world? Here's the soul, powerful in every way. This is what lies within us. And yet, it's covered. It's covered over by a veil of illusion. We are trapped in that veil. We see through these eyes. We hear through these ears. And our soul is dormant. We do not feel its presence. We almost believe it doesn't exist. Well, not almost. For many people, it just doesn't exist. There's just matter. There's just this body. And that's all they can think about, is how to enjoy this body, how to make the most out of it, how to pleasure their senses, how to be able to eat, drink, and be merry. For tomorrow we die. And they claim that there's nothing beyond that. The fact is that that's actually impossible. This physical body in and of itself is incapable of movement. It is incapable of even being able to blink an eyelid, what to say of standing up and what to say of running and moving and working and thinking and all of that. These parts that we have work because of the presence of the life force within us. And as soon as that life force enters, all of this starts to work. And when that life force leaves, all of this stops working. And that can happen at any time, at any age. It doesn't necessarily only happen when you're old. It can happen at any time to any of us. That life force, that spiritual energy is referred to as the soul, Atma. That's what they call it in Sanskrit. And Krishna describes that Atma, that soul, is never born and never dies. And that's very akin to what you learn in physics, or you learn that in science through even what Einstein was talking about, that matter cannot be created or destroyed. Well, matter is energy, and so is the soul. The soul is a higher frequency of energy, and as such, it too cannot be created or destroyed. You can never be created or destroyed. You were never born and never die. Your body was born, but not you. Your body will die, but not you. You are an eternal, immortal being. And that's fascinating to understand. But we're here, trapped in this physical form. Trapped, I say, because we're limited by it. We want to do so much. We would love to be able to fly. We would love to be able to travel to other universes and planets. We would love to be able to be free in so many ways, but we're limited by the body. And then we try to create all these mechanical interventions to help us get from one place to another, do this or do that. But those mechanical interventions have their limitations, and there's only so much they can do. So we have to realize that the impulse that we have within us to stay young forever, the impulse that we have to live forever, the impulse that we have to be able to do amazing and wonderful things, all comes from the soul. Even our impulse for knowledge, even our impulse to understand the world around us, all comes from the soul, because that's who we are. Think about this very clearly. Why do you want what you want in life? Why do you want love? Why do you want happiness? Why do you want peace? Why do you want to enjoy? Why do you want pleasure? Why? Why do you want power? Why do you want fame? Why do you want all of this? All of this comes down to the soul, and then the second part of that is the covering around the soul, which we refer to as the mind, body, and the ego, man, buddhi, ahankar, which then has its own nature. And now we have become subservient to that nature. We have become subservient to the demands of the body. We have become its slave. We have become subservient to the demands of the mind and of the ego, which wants to look good, which wants to prove its worth, which wants to be important and significant. The soul doesn't need any of that. It knows its worth. It knows its value. It has no need to prove anything. Back again to our tale of the Bhagavatam. So for 8 months, the sun's rays had drunk the earth's wealth in the form of water. So, hot sun had drunk the earth's wealth in the form of water, right? The water had evaporated. Now the proper time had arrived, and the sun began releasing this accumulated wealth onto the earth. Flashing with lightning, great clouds were shaken and swept about by fierce winds. It's lightning and winds and clouds everywhere. And then the Bhagavatam compares that to a merciful person who's giving charity, who's giving their wealth to the world in the same way the clouds were giving their lives for the pleasure of the world. Srila Prabhupada in the purport writes, the distribution of rain by clouds is so sumptuous that it is compared to the distribution of wealth by a great munificent person. The clouds' downpour is so sufficient that the rains even fall on rocks and hills and on oceans and seas where there is no need for water. It is like a charitable person who opens his treasury for distribution and who does not discriminate whether the charity is needed or not. He gives in charity open-handedly. This idea of open-handedly, what does it mean? It means this person does not really try to get something for their ego out of their giving. They are not concerned about people recognizing them. This is a true giving, okay? True giving is not that I give to have my name on a placard to be announced to everyone that, oh, this person gave so much in charity. They don't even want to be known. The true giving is where you give, as one person explained, where your right hand does not know what your left hand is doing. So in that way, the giving becomes truly selfless. It is not based upon the ego. It is not based upon looking good or having people like you or think you're something amazing. Prabhupada writes further, metaphorically speaking, the lightning in rain clouds is the light by which they see the distressed condition of the earth, and the blowing winds are their heavy breathing, such as that found in a distressed person. Distressed to see the condition of the earth, the clouds tremble in the wind like a compassionate person. Thus they pour down their rain. It's a beautiful analogy, comparing the thunder and the lightning to be like the compassion of a person who really cares about the well-being of others, and who then opens up their heart and opens up whatever they have and shares it and distributes it with the world. Imagine if we could be like these rain clouds. Imagine if we had the ability to be selfless. It's very difficult for us because we're still thinking of our survival. We're not only thinking of our survival, we're thinking of our survival all the way into old age. And then we're thinking of the survival of our children and their children after them. And so in this way, we are caught up in holding on to what we have, although nothing we have can ever be really held on to. It's a struggle that we have, a struggle for survival, a struggle for being able to provide. And at the same time, we want to be compassionate, we want to be helpful, we want to try to serve. We have to find the right balance between the two. It continues, the earth had been starved by the summer heat, but she became fully nourished when moistened by the god of rain. The earth was like a person whose body has been emaciated by austerities undergone for a material purpose, but who has become fully nourished when he achieves the fruit of those austerities. Now, that's an interesting analogy, that a person sometimes, and this happens a lot, well, it happens when you see people really working hard to achieve their goals. Like sometimes a yogi might be engaged in all kinds of austerities and might even become emaciated. In the process. Srila Prabhupada writes, sometimes when a country is subjugated by an undesirable government, persons and parties undergo severe penances and austerities to get control of the government. So this thing of penance and austerity is very important. We call it hard work in today's time. But basically what we're doing is we have to forego something, some pleasure, some enjoyment, some time with our family or our friends or whatever. We could have gone on a vacation, but we perform severe penances and austerities. In other words, we work really hard. We give up a lot of pleasures to be able to achieve our goals. And if that goal, in the case of this example here, is to get control of a government, well, some people will work really hard to get to that position. And he says that when they attain control, they flourish by giving themselves generous salaries. So you'll see this happen a lot, especially in countries around the world, where once people attain a position of power, they make sure that they reap the benefits, they milk it, they make sure that they get all the benefits that they can. They try to make millions of dollars in the process, and they take full advantage. To get there, they had to work hard, but now that they're there, it is their bonanza, it's their time to really reap it in. So this, he says, is like the flourishing of the earth in the rainy season. Actually, one should undergo severe austerities and penances only to achieve spiritual happiness. That's the real purpose, the real purpose of hard work, the real purpose of achievement. The real achievement in life is not material happiness, because that's flickering. That's only there for a short while that you'll enjoy it. And after that, it's gone. The real purpose of human life is to attain and achieve spiritual happiness, which no one can take away from you. I remember being 13 years old and saying to my family, I don't want to work hard for just to buy a house and a car and all of this stuff, because I know that everyone's going to die and leave it all behind. So I could see that. What I did want to know is, what's the purpose of life? Why are we here? And then as I began to understand that, I began to realize we're here to find who we are. Why? Because when we find who we are, we find the secret to all happiness, to everything we've been seeking. How? Because that happiness is the very nature of who we are. It is the nature of the soul. Sat Chit Ananda. That ananda, that bliss, is the very nature of the soul. The soul is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. Anandamayo bhyasat. It is its very nature. In the Bhagavatam, it is recommended that tapasya or austerity should be accepted for realizing the Supreme Being. For by doing this, one regains one's spiritual life and enjoys unlimited spiritual bliss. This is interesting. Regains one's spiritual life. What do you mean regains? Well, it's sort of like this. If you've had something very precious and you've lost it, and if that thing got covered over by dust and dirt, well, let's say it was a diamond, and that dust and dirt now caked onto that diamond, you'd have to clear all that dirt. You'd have to uncover it and have it polished so that its shine would come through again. In much the same way, regaining our spiritual life means being able to polish up the impurities, the dirt of desire that has accumulated on the soul. And as we cleanse the heart, the mind, the body, the soul, we find that spiritual energy begins to shine through, and we begin to enjoy unlimited spiritual bliss. Then it says, but if someone undertakes austerities and penances for some material gain, it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that the results are temporary and are desired only by persons of less intelligence. And the Bhagavatam continues, in the evening twilight of the rainy season, the darkness allowed the glowworms, or fireflies, to shine forth, but not the stars. An interesting analogy here. Glowworms are like fireflies. And if you haven't seen them, they're just the most incredible thing to see. Absolutely amazing and beautiful. So it compares fireflies to Give me a moment here. Yeah. In much the same way, during the age of Kali, the predominance of sinful activities allows atheistic doctrines to overshadow the true knowledge of the Vedas. So it's talking about how during the rainy season, the evening twilight of the rainy season, the darkness allows the glowworms to shine forth, the fireflies to shine forth, but not the stars. See why the stars are covered by clouds, right? So then it compares that to the age of Kali, where due to the predominance of sinful activities, atheistic doctrines are able to overshadow the true knowledge of the Vedas. Okay, let's just pause a moment and see what they're trying to say here. In the age of Kali, this is the time we live in now, the age of quarrel, hypocrisy, dissension, where we see all around us ignorance spreading. We think that we have a lot of knowledge, but actually what we have is a lot of ignorance. A lot of things that, see, real knowledge is that which brings us closer to our true self. And ignorance is that which takes us away from our true self. Real knowledge enlightens us. And what we have today, the kind of knowledge that we're accumulating through our AI and through all our computers and technology and all of that, that knowledge only makes us more and more obsessed with the external world. So you have to ask yourself, one is a distraction from the true self, and the other brings us towards our true self. Which one do you want? That which brings you to your true self brings you towards your true happiness. That which takes you away from that gives you an illusion of happiness, but never the real thing. And so, therefore, one would refer to that as a distraction from the true journey of life. So now he says here that in the age of Kali, the predominance of sinful activities allows atheistic doctrines to overshadow the true knowledge of the Vedas. So what are these sinful activities? What are we talking about here? We're talking about activities that are focused on sensual pleasures. By sensual pleasures, I mean everything from eating, drinking, making merry. This is all. Why is it sinful? Because it's taking us away from who we are, and it is therefore causing us suffering. So during such a time, when everyone is caught up in the enjoyment of the senses, atheistic doctrines flourish. Why? Because atheism talks about how there's no God in control. There is no cause or reason behind the universe. It just exists. It just happened with the Big Bang. And atheistic doctrines tell us, therefore, that there is no point or no purpose to life. And therefore, just do whatever you feel like. If you like it, if it feels good, do it. And that's basically the essence of atheistic doctrine, because there is no other substance to or understanding of life within that doctrine. Now, I'd love to hear from you if that is true or not. I'd love to hear from you whether you think there is a different meaning to the times we live in. What is the purpose of life in today's time? Work hard, make a lot of money, enjoy yourself, go on cruises, go on travel here and there, buy a house, buy a car, get old, die. Really? And let's say there is reincarnation, then what? Now, it's like, that cycle in the rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. You just repeat the cycle again and again and again and again. Why? You have to stop at some point and say, why am I doing this? What's the point? So that's what the Vedas do. The Vedas are the original texts of knowledge that were put into writing around 7,000 years ago, and were there thousands of years even before that. And they were there to give us guidance, to show us the way in these dark times. Srila Prabhupada writes, during the rainy season in the evening, there are many fireflies visible around the tops of trees, hither and thither, and they glitter just like lights. But the luminaries in the sky, the stars and the moon, are not visible. Similarly, in the age of Kali, persons who are mental speculators, atheists, and manufacturers of so-called religious principles become prominent like fireflies or glowworms, whereas persons strictly following the Vedic principles become covered by the clouds of ignorance. People should learn to take advantage of the actual luminaries in the sky, the sun, moon, and stars, instead of the fireflies or glowworms' light. So he's saying that the real actual luminaries, the real things that will guide us, is the wisdom of the Vedas. It continues. The frogs who had all along been lying silent suddenly began croaking when they heard the rumbling of the rain clouds, in the same way that Brahmin students who performed their morning duties in silence begin reciting their lessons when called by their teacher. So who are these Brahmin students? Just to give you a little idea, you'll have students sitting in meditation. They're taught at a very young age how to meditate, how to be able to engage in spiritual life, and that the purpose of life is not just to eat and drink and be merry. This is the training that is given in the Vedic culture. So they learn meditation, they learn how to quiet the mind, they learn how to connect with the soul, they recite mantras, they learn all these texts that we're reading. Srila Prabhupada writes, students are generally supposed to rise early in the morning, but they do not usually arise of their own accord. However, only when there is a bell sounded in the temple or other spiritual institution, then they get up. By the order of the spiritual master, they immediately arise, and after finishing their morning duties, they sit down to study the Vedas or chant Vedic mantras. Everyone is sleeping in the darkness of this age, Kali Yuga. But when there is a great teacher, a great acharya, a great guru, by his calling only, everyone takes to the study of the Vedas to acquire actual knowledge. So the word Veda means knowledge. And this knowledge is the knowledge by which ignorance or nescience is destroyed. The darkness within us is destroyed. The illusions within us are destroyed. And we're able to see clearly who we are and able to see everyone else in the same way, all creatures, nature. We're able to, our eyes open. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. That our spiritual teacher opens our eyes and shows us the reality of life beyond the illusions that we've been living. With the advent of the rainy season, the insignificant streams which had become dry began to swell and stray from their proper courses, like the body, property, and money of a person controlled by the urges of his senses. So what happens when a person, is under the sway of their senses? Then they use their body, their property, their money without proper guidance. They waste their time, they waste their life. Srila Prabhupada writes, during the rainy season, many small ponds, lakes, and rivulets become filled with water. Otherwise, the rest of the year they remain dry. Similarly, materialistic persons are dry, but sometimes they are in so-called opulent positions with a home or children or a little bank balance, and they appear to be flourishing, but immediately afterwards they become dry again, like small rivulets and ponds. The poet Vidyapati said that in the society of friends, family, children, wife, husband, etc., there is certainly some pleasure, but that pleasure is compared to a drop of water in the desert. So think of being in the desert and what it's like when you have a drop of water. That's all you have. And so he's comparing material pleasures to someone in the desert. And they're wanting water, but they don't have any. Then he says, everyone is hankering after happiness, just as in the desert everyone is hankering after water. If in the desert there is a drop of water, it may of course be said that the water is there, but the benefit from that drop of water is very significant. In our materialistic way of life, which is just like a desert, we are hankering after an ocean of happiness. But in the form of society, friends, and mundane love, we are getting no more than a drop of water. Our satisfaction is never achieved. So think about that. Are we truly satisfied with what we've got? Are we truly happy? And for how long does that happiness last? The newly grown grass made the earth. So now it's talking about as the rain came in, the newly grown grass made the earth emerald green. The insects added a reddish hue, and white mushrooms added further color and circles of shade. Thus the earth appeared like a person who has suddenly become rich. With their wealth of grains, the fields gave joy to the farmers, but those fields created remorse in the hearts of those who were too proud to engage in farming and who failed to understand how everything is under the control of the Supreme. So in the purport it is written, it is common for people living in large cities to become miserable and disgusted with when there is ample rainfall, right? You know how it is. When it rains a lot, we get hassled. We feel, oh my God, it's raining again today. Oh, I have to take an umbrella. I'm going to get all wet. The roads are going to be filled with water. He says they do not understand or have forgotten that rain is nourishing the crops they will eat. Although they are certainly enjoying eating, they do not appreciate that with the rain, the Supreme Lord is feeding not only human beings, but also plants, animals, and the earth itself. Here we are, trying to avoid the rain as much as possible. Modern sophisticated people often look down their noses at those engaged in agricultural work and think of them as simple and unintelligent. There are also government agencies that restrict agricultural production because certain capitalists fear that the effect on the market prices. It goes on then to talk about how various artificial and manipulative practices modern government, we find widespread food shortages throughout the world, even the United States, among the poverty-stricken. And at the same time, we find governments paying farmers not to plant crops. So there are many such theories of this sort. But he goes on to say that the administration of the arrogant and ignorant, who are too proud to obey the laws of God or too ignorant to recognize them, will always cause frustration amongst the people, whereas a God-conscious government will provide abundance and happiness for all. This is an important point here. I've been recently hearing about various groups, fundamentalist groups in the US as well, that want or that think that a God-conscious government is only for a small segment of the people, a particular religion, a particular race, a particular color. And only they deserve all the benefits of society. That they are the only ones who can be the true government, and they are the ones who need to be the ones in charge of everything and everyone else should be subservient to them. But this is not the Vedic way. The Vedas say very clearly that that a God-conscious government will provide abundance and happiness for all. Take a look at this very famous quote. Om sarve bhavantu sukhina sarve santantu niramaya sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschid kabhavita. So what is it saying here? It's saying that may all sentient beings be at peace. May no one suffer from illness. May all see what is auspicious. May no one suffer. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om, peace, peace, peace. Do you notice that the emphasis is on all? May everyone, may all be at peace. May all be free from suffering and from illness. May all receive that which is auspicious. May no one suffer. It is not about just a particular race prospering, or a particular gender, or a particular religion, or a particular group of people. People who think like that are not spiritual. They are not people of God, no matter even if they claim so. Because for God, there is no difference between one race or gender or religion. God has no religion. God is not part of any sect or any group or any cult. But these are the ways of thinking that you are superior to others, and that is not the way of God. In God's eyes, everyone is the same. All creatures are the same. All beings are the same. Krishna says it very clearly. I am equal to all. I have no partiality. Except for those who love me, but there's a little partiality there. But yes, but that does not come in the form of trying to, lord it over others, or try to, give one group a set of privileges over another. Bhagavatam continues, as all creatures of the land and water took advantage of the newly fallen rain, their forms became attractive and pleasing, just as a devotee becomes beautiful by engaging in the service of the Supreme Godhead. There you see these beautiful pictures of Chaitanya and of yogis being filled with light and tejas and urja, an energy that radiates through their being. And anyone who comes across such beings, even now, even today, will feel that energy. It is not that we have to go some faraway place in some heaven to be able to feel the presence of the divine. We can feel it in people who are evolved even here and now. They exist and they walk amongst us. And we are blessed to have their association even in this world, even here and now. So he's saying that just as a devotee becomes beautiful by engaging in the service of the Supreme Godhead, so also the entire land became beautiful and attractive and pleasing. Where the rivers joined the ocean became agitated, its waves blown about by the wind. And it compares this to the mind of an immature yogi that becomes agitated because he is still tainted by lust and attached to the objects of sense gratification. So very often we come across people who have taken to the path, might even become a sannyasi or a yogi or a person who's supposedly renounced, might even be a monk or living in an ashram. But don't be fooled by that. Just because they wear a certain outfit, just because they've taken a certain vow, that does not mean that they have become free from lust and the desire for possession and ownership and sense enjoyment. Sometimes the possession and ownership is of an ashram. Sometimes it's about that monkhood that they have, and one can become proud of that. and one can become arrogant in that. So a true sign of someone who is highly evolved is that they are no longer agitated by their senses or their mind or by anger or by lust, that they are actually genuinely free of all these things. So it's not by the dress of a person, but by their actual behavior, their acharan, their behavior, that we get to know who they are and how evolved they really are. Some people have, huge followings. They're gurus, they have tremendous followings, but it doesn't mean they're necessarily evolved. You have to watch very closely to be able to determine where a person is at. At the same time, it's very important to not judge them, because Krishna says that even if one is engaged in the most horrific of acts, if that person is rightly resolved towards me, one must consider them saintly. So it's a very fine line. You don't want to judge people who are on the path, but at the same time, you don't want to necessarily follow someone blindly. It's important to be discerning without being judgmental. The Bhagavatam continues, and it says, just as devotees whose minds are absorbed in the Supreme Godhead remain peaceful even when attacked by all sorts of dangers, the mountains in the rainy season were not at all disturbed by the repeated striking of the rain-bearing clouds. So during the rainy season, the roads became covered over with grass and debris and are difficult to traverse, as we see here. Right? Very difficult to make it through the roads when they're full of rainwater. And it compares this to religious scriptures becoming corrupted and covered over with the passage of time. And we've seen this happen everywhere. We've seen this happen with all scriptures. We've seen this happen with all teachings. And therefore it's very important that you don't just have books, you don't just have scriptures, that you have people who embody those scriptures, who live those teachings, and who can show you how to do the same. See, it's very important. Just like there is a theory and an experiment and a conclusion by which the process of science works, the same way spirituality is a science. And the books that you have are the theory. The experiments are what you will practice on yourself. And the conclusions are what you'll arrive at when you've done the practice. But, how do you know something's working? You need to have someone who's an example. And therefore you have spiritual teachers and gurus who are the living embodiment of that teaching and therefore teach by example. That's why it's a very precarious place to be. Not only does one have to live by example, but also be consistently there. And what is that example? To be free of desire, to be free of hankering, to be free of anartha nivriti, free of all the impurities that cloud the mind, the consciousness. And to be in one's spiritual essence, in one's soul, as that radiant spiritual being that we all are. When you meet someone like that, yes, you know that you found someone who is the embodiment of the scriptures and the spiritual teachings. Though the clouds are the well-wishing friends of all living beings, the lightning, fickle in its affinities, moved from one group of clouds to another like a lusty, unfaithful lover. I just absolutely love the analogies here. Though the clouds are well-wishing friends of all living entities, the lightning, fickle in its affinities, moved from one group of clouds to another like a lusty, unfaithful lover. Right? When the curved bow of Indra appeared in the sky, that is the rainbow, it was unlike ordinary bows because it did not rest upon a string. Right? What is that bow that does not rest upon a string? It's the rainbow. So, similarly, when the Supreme Being appears in the world, unlike ordinary persons, because he remains free from all material qualities and independent of all material conditions. So what he's trying to point out here is that when the divine, the Supreme Being, God, appears in this world as Krishna, then unlike ordinary persons, he remains free from all material qualities. He does not have a material body, he does not have material qualities. Many people say that Ishvara, the Supreme Being, is nirgun. Nirgun means having no qualities. Actually, it means having no material qualities. He is therefore sagun. He has all qualities, but no material qualities. And he's independent of all material conditions. That means he's not affected by material conditions in any way, neither by old age, nor by disease, nor by death. Not affected by any of that. So when you see Krishna, you recognize that. Radha and Krishna, the Supreme Being incarnate. During the rainy season, the moon was prevented from appearing directly by the covering of the clouds, which were themselves illuminated by the moon's rays. Similarly, the living being in material existence is prevented from appearing directly by the covering of the false ego, which is itself illuminated by the consciousness of the pure soul. Let's go slow over that. The living being in material existence is prevented from appearing directly by the covering of the false ego. So when it says the living being, that's the soul, in material existence, is prevented from appearing, is not visible to us, is not even felt by us directly, because of the covering of the false ego, which is itself illumined by the consciousness of the... So the false ego is able to only function because of the presence of the soul, and yet it covers the soul. What is the false ego? The false ego is your identity, that which you think you are. Not that which you are is the soul, but that which you think you are. What is it that you think you are? You think you're this body, you think you're this gender, you think you're this nationality, you think you're this race, you think that you are all these things that happen to you in the course of your life. That accumulation of data, starting with your name and gender, all the way up to your life experiences, your knowledge, and all of that, is what you think you are. That is what defines you. You're a business person, you're a president of the company, you're the whatever it might be, right? That becomes your definition. That's your false ego. That is not your real self. That is the false self, right? And that false self is only able to exist because of the presence of the real self, the soul. But the soul is hidden, concealed, until you seek it. Until you seek it. And until you allow the clouds that are blocking its view, the distortions that are blocking, and until you remove those, you will not be able to feel its presence. In the purport, it is written, in material life, our false ego is often enthusiastic, hopeful, and encourages us to push on in material existence. But in truth, we are merely experiencing the dull reflection of our original, pure, spiritual consciousness, not realizing that our real spiritual consciousness is full of knowledge and happiness. This is comparable to thinking that the luminous clouds are lighting up the night sky, but in fact it is the moon that illumines the sky and the clouds, and the clouds merely dull and hamper the moonshine. So in the same way, it appears that we are alive, but our true aliveness is being hidden, concealed by the false ego. The peacocks became festive and cried out a joyful greeting when they saw the clouds arrive. Let's take a look at the peacocks as they begin to dance. Such an amazing sight. And then it compares this to people distressed in household life feel pleasure when the pure devotees of the infallible Supreme Lord visit them. So all of us are distressed in household life. Why distressed? Because there's so much of a struggle. You got to go hard, you work hard. You got to drive to work, you got to come back from there. You got to deal with all kinds of people. There's all the pressures of trying to pay your bills and so much so we're distressed in household life. Then there's our family members and all the dramas that happen within that and our friends, and it's endless. So just as people distressed in household life feel pleasure when the pure devotees of the infallible Lord, sometimes when a very highly evolved being comes to visit you, at that point there's a relief. Just as the peacocks feel that relief when the rain comes and they cry out with a joyful greeting when they see the clouds. In the purport it is written, after the dry summer season, the peacocks become jubilant with the arrival of the first thundering rain clouds, and thus they dance in great happiness. Srila Prabhupada comments, we have practical experience of this. Many of our students were dry and morose prior to their coming to Krishna consciousness, but having come into contact with devotees, they are now dancing like jubilant peacocks. The Bhagavatam continues, the trees had grown thin and dry, but after they drank the newly fallen rainwater through their feet, their various bodily features blossomed. Similarly, one whose body has grown thin and weak from austerity again exhibits his healthy bodily features upon enjoying the material objects gained through that austerity. So it goes on to explain about how, human beings struggle to get the things they want in life, and when they get those things, they think that they're happy. But in fact, they're never really happy. They have to keep on and on and on struggling to get more and more of those pleasures. It's never ending. It then says the cranes continued dwelling on the shores of the lakes along the shores of the lakes were agitated during the rainy season. And here we see them. Just as materialistic persons with contaminated minds always remain at home despite the many disturbances there. And the purport he writes, innumerable painful occurrences are always disturbing family life, but a materialistic person never even considers leaving his family in the hands of his grown children and going away for spiritual improvement. So the Vedic culture was like that as you got older, say you came into your 50s, your children were grown up, you'd start spending more and more time away from home and begin to immerse yourself more in your spiritual improvement. And in this way, society was designed not around just accumulating monetary gain, but rather around, yes, we need to live, yes, we need to have our family and our children and so on and so forth. But as they grow up, we need to move on, and we need to dedicate ourselves to our spiritual advancement. When the Vrindavan forest had thus become resplendent, filled with ripe dates and fruits, Krishna, surrounded by his cows and cowherd friends, accompanied by his brother Balaram, entered the forest to enjoy. And this is that scene of Krishna and his brother Balaram coming along with their friends to enjoy the wonderful sight of the forest and all of nature as it was blossoming. The cows had to move slowly because of their heavy milk bags, but they quickly ran to Krishna as soon as he called them. Krishna would take his meal of boiled rice and yogurt sent from home in the company of his brother Balaram and the cowherd boys, who regularly ate with him. They would all sit down to eat on a large stone near the water. And there you see Krishna with his friends. So this is what life with God is like. It's a wonderful picnic. It's a beautiful party. It's a wonderful celebration. And there doesn't need to be fear of any kind. Only joy, only bliss. That's what spiritual life is about. Krishna watched the contented bulls, calves, and cows sitting on the green grass and grazing with closed eyes. He saw that the cows were tired from the burden of their heavy milk bags. Thus, observing the beauty and opulence of Vrindavan's rainy season, a perennial source of great happiness, Krishna offered all respect to that season, which was created by his own internal potency. Soon the fall arrived, and the sky is cloudless, the water clear, and the wind gentle. The autumn season, which regenerated the lotus flowers, also restored the various bodies of water to their original purity. And so came the lotuses. Just as the process of bhakti or devotional service purifies the mind of the fallen yogis when they return to it. Autumn cleared the sky of clouds and let the animals come out into the fields, cleaned the earth of its covering of mud, and purified the water of contamination in the same way that loving service rendered to Krishna frees everyone from their respective troubles. The clouds, having given up all they possessed, shone forth with purified effulgence. Just like peaceful sages who have given up all material desires and are free from all sinful propensities. A person who gives up material desires and sinful propensities becomes purified and then brilliantly reflects his own soul and the Supreme Soul within. So I think with that, we'll wind up for this evening. I'd love to know if any of you have any questions. Is there anyone who'd like to ask any questions? Anybody at all? No one's written down any questions here. Any comments? Anything that you would like to ask? Okay. If any of you who are on Zoom would like to come on video and ask a question, please let me know. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you, Swati, for saying that. I mean, the rainy season has been one of my favorite seasons, especially in India. It's most remarkable. You have the heat of the summer, and then the rain comes. I don't particularly care for rain during the winter, but after the summer season, oh my gosh, when the rain comes, people step out and start dancing in the rain. People celebrate the coming of the rain. It's such a wonderful, joyous moment. I grew up in Mumbai where it was exactly like that. It's just so beautiful. All right, any further questions or comments? Anything you'd like to share that you learned from this? Well, all right, if there's nothing else, then we'll wind up here. Thank you so much for being here. Please remember, we're here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern. And if you're in India, then it's 7:30 a.m. on Wednesdays. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, you learn to appreciate the rain so much more after the drought. Hari Bol. Thank you. And please come again. We love having you here. Jai Shri Krishna. Hare Krishna.